household is kind of full. We're a multi-generational household with 7 people living under one roof. I live with my wife, 4 kids, and my mother-in-law. Oh, and there's a dog. Truth be told, I think if you asked Turbo, he'd tell you there are 8 people living under one roof. But that's another story. The funny thing about having all these people under one roof is this. They ate food yesterday. And for some strange and inconceivable reason, they expect to be fed again today. To make matters worse, while I haven't confirmed this with any one of them, I also strongly suspect they plan on eating tomorrow. All this eating means my household needs a cook. But it might not be me. Now, I do a lot of the cooking in the household because I like to cook. But with 4 kids and multiple jobs, we're always coming and going, and it takes more than one person. If I had to guess, I would say I do most of the cooking, and then my wife, and then my kids, and my mother-in-law. But of course, it's not as simple as that, is it? Here's a sample of an average week during the school year in the Brogy household. Somewhere in the midst of swim practice, basketball practice, guitar lessons, school board, meetings, homework, small group Bible study, and 3rd shifts in the hospital, we have to actually find the time to make all that food we plan on eating. Responsibility falls on my wife Mary Jane and I to set aside time to plan out the meals for the week. Whether we want to or not, someone in our house has to be intentional about eating or it won't happen. Oh, sure, there are times when we have to live in the moment. Auburn may be playing Alabama in the Iron Bowl, and on the spur of the moment, we decide to scrap the plan, order pizza, and watch the game together. Or maybe Mary Jane gets sick and everything's off kilter, and I find myself running through the drive-thru on the way home from guitar practice to pick up Chick-fil-A for the family rather than stick to the original plan. But here's the thing. Even in those cases when we have to adapt or live in the moment, at least one of us still has to be intentional. Someone has to order the pizza. Someone has to drive the car. Someone has to make the decision. We try to share the job of meal prep in our house, but if no one does it, no one eats. Nurturing the spiritual health of a household is a lot like nurturing its physical health. You can have help from multiple people, but at the end of the day, you need at least one cook. Now, in the last session, we explored the common characteristics of what Barna described as spiritually vibrant households. These are households that, regardless of size, income, or makeup, apply spiritual disciplines together, have spiritual conversations on a regular basis, and practice hospitality. In an attempt to better understand these spiritually vibrant households, Barna examined these households more closely and found they share a number of other attributes, including this important one. Spiritually vibrant households are overwhelmingly more likely to have at least one person in the household who is spiritually coaching the household. Now, I don't know about you, but when I first heard that, I got a little nervous. What do they mean by spiritual coaching? It sounds a bit intimidating, sounds so formal. And depending on what religious tradition you come from, your mind may be filling with all sorts of questions about who is even qualified to be a spiritual coach. Is there anyone who even can be a spiritual coach within my household? When Barna uses the term spiritual coaching, it is actually pretty simple. Spiritual coaching is simply taking the initiative to intentionally nurture the faith of your household by promoting the 3 vibrant household characteristics. This nurturing happens through modeling, instructing, and encouraging in both everyday and planned moments. This means that if you're doing this study, you're probably in a position to do some spiritual coaching in your household. Now, before you get overwhelmed by that statement, consider this for a moment. The term coach usually brings to mind one person who is autonomous and in charge, the head coach, the one who calls the shots. But think again about a sport, any sport. Whether it's my son's 1st grade soccer team or the Cleveland Browns, teams almost always have multiple coaches. Different people who are offering instruction, encouragement, and modeling good practices. But they need to have at least one. We're using the term spiritual coaching as an action that you or I or anyone can do, no matter our household role, parent, grandparent, child, sibling, roommate, or spouse. we can participate in spiritual coaching. But wait, Jason, this sounds great, but I don't have the same type of household you do. We're really just too busy. Maybe. I'm not in your household. But here's the thing. For most of you watching this, I can make a couple of safe guesses. The first is that you're probably already feeling led to take the spiritual nourishment of your household a little more seriously, or you wouldn't have made it to week 4. My second guess is this. No matter how busy you are, people in your household probably eat food every day. When things are important, you make time for them. Well, sometimes not as much time as we want, sometimes it's brief, but we don't just ignore them. Being a spiritual coach in your household really is like being one of the cooks. You can spend the rest of your life refining your cooking skills, learning new recipes, figuring out how to be healthier, etc. But to get started, all you need is the willingness to jump in. So let's get started. We're going to give you a few basic pointers. For some of you, these pointers will be a reminder of things you already know and are doing. But for some of you, this might be the first time you try to dice an onion, and I'll be showing you where the knife drawer is. We will focus on 3 steps: developing a coaching posture, evaluating your household, and planning appropriate moments. If we want to help nurture the faith of our household, it starts with us. We can't expect growth from people when we aren't showing growth ourselves. This means we need to start by taking a long look at ourselves and our own discipleship. Where do we find following Jesus easy? Where do we find ourselves constantly stumbling and needing to come back to the Lord to ask for forgiveness and help? There are a lot of different tools out there to help you look at this. We've listed a few, including one that we have developed in the participant guide. Whether we are intentional about it or not, our lives and our actions are a model for those around us. When our housemates see us applying spiritual disciplines or responding confidently in spiritual conversations, it'll be easier to invite them on that same path of growth. Our actions then speak louder than our words to our household members. Often it is our actions that are passed down through the generations. Here are 2 adults sharing about how their practice of hospitality emerged naturally from seeing their parents model it.
My mom was an excellent host. It was really common for us to have people over for dinner or have people over on a Saturday to watch Nebraska Husker football or other little holidays. We would always have people in our house. So I guess I'm the oldest girl sibling, so I think I pick up on what my parents do the most, and I recreate those. Those are my habits now, I suppose.
My parents were in the military. Both of my parents were in the military, and growing up as a kid, my dad was one of those people that come Thanksgiving, he would sort of round up all the strays. All the guys that were away from their families and everything else. So my poor mom often didn't know how many people were going to be at our Thanksgiving table, and that seemed normal to me. We've always been a family that entertained and had people over, and sometimes people just dropping in, somebody who needed a place to stay. And so no, I've never thought about it. It's just been a very natural progression in kind of our life, and I enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, and I definitely enjoy it too, kind of because I've always felt very used to it. I remember there was one Thanksgiving where we just had giant hordes of people over, and so I do get very used to it. Even when we moved here, it was still very natural and everything kind of felt like it's okay, so-and-so's come over, okay.
Modeling being a disciple of Jesus is good, but it isn't enough. People need someone who actively takes a role in the spiritual development of their lives. When it comes to spiritual coaching, we call this taking on a coaching posture. This posture comes by being present, engaged, and interested in the members of our household. By present, we mean both physically and psychologically. When you're physically present, you are there in the flesh. You are at the dinner table, in the yard, on the couch. When you're psychologically present, you're not preoccupied, not distracted by your phone or your to-do list back at work. Being present builds and strengthens the relationships. Engaged. When you're engaged with those around you, you are actively listening to what they have to say. You can learn more about active listening in the LHM Learn course, Caring Conversations. You not only restate what you're hearing and asking clarifying questions that show you are paying attention and want to know more, you're also willing to share about yourself in an act of vulnerability that builds and strengthens the relationship. Interested. It is significant to a person when another is genuinely interested in what interests them. By being curious, you can learn more about their hobbies or interests. By being empathetic, you can show care and concern for their life experiences. By being other-oriented as opposed to self-centered, you're building and strengthening the relationship. The next step is evaluating your household. You've already started this process. Questions we've been asking you since this study began were designed to help you to think more deeply about the spiritual vibrancy of your household. Before moving on, take out the vibrancy inventory. Now that you've learned more about the vibrancy characteristics, is there anything you would change? It's not cheating to change your answers. This is a tool to help you think about your household in new ways to make it easier to plan appropriate moments. So my wife and I try to sit down once a week and plan. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes things come up. Sometimes one of us has to do it by ourselves. But we try to set time aside on a regular basis to look at the upcoming week and figure out what the game plan is. This week, Sunday is going to be a more leisurely night. I'll do a bigger sit-down meal for us. Monday night is ice skating lessons. Mary Jane will have something on the table when I get home. Tuesday night, everyone works and I have a school board meeting. Better make it a crock-pot meal so it's ready to go when we get home. It's a little like a puzzle. There's no one meal that's going to work all the time. We have to look at what's going on and see what best fits. And occasionally we know there'll be a day when we have to punt. So we even try to be intentional about that punting. Being intentional here is the key. Take a listen to a few vibrant households talk about intentionality and planning in their own words.
Again, it's a time where when we can get together and talk about more personal and more important stuff than what we do when we just briefly meet during the day or see each other during the day. And I have been very intentional in buying like books as the children or our grandchildren that live with us have grown. I've been intentional in buying books that appeal to them, so that provoke some kind of interaction, some questions that will open up a conversation at the dinner table that is intentional and that has some meaning for them, especially more than for us sometimes. But how are we doing life? How are we doing life together? What does it mean for you to believe this or that? How do you deal with this or that issue in your life right now when you are a teenager, for example, or when you are just getting out of those teenage years?
What has worked is devotions, where you really take a chunk of scripture, read the context, try to talk about where that came from, and then reading the devotion that applies to that kid, which when you have teenagers 16 through age 4 is difficult. So sometimes our 16-year-old is sitting through the Jesus Storybook Bible And we're just laughing through that and talking about it. And sometimes our 4-year-old's sitting through a teenage talk, running around not paying attention, and that's just the reality of it. And it has worked really well because those writers really have in mind how to get to the heart of your child, and that's what's important.
It's time to do the same thing with your household's spiritual vibrancy. If you want to nurture the spiritual health of your household, you'll have to sit down and do a little planning. We have some suggestions to help, but every household is different, and there isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. We recommend you start by picking an area you want to grow in. Maybe it's the area you felt your household was the weakest in when you did the inventory. Or maybe that's got you intimidated, and knowing this is the first time, you want to pick something you at least have some practice in. That's okay too. Just start by picking an area. Take some time to look through the list of activities that could help your own household grow more spiritually vibrant. As you scan through the activities, consider how each activity could be pursued in a planned moment. It doesn't have to be complex. In fact, it is the sort of thing kids can help with too. Part of spiritually coaching your household will be intentionally planning moments for your household. But a lot of spiritual coaching happens in the moment. Think of these moments as coachable or teachable moments that are ripe for encouragement and instruction. In the everyday moments of life in your household, you notice an opportunity to speak to a housemate or a family member words that will encourage or instruct. It's a lot like a coach during a game or a practice session, speaking to a team member in the moment in a way that is helpful for their growth. For some of us, this is maybe the scariest piece of this whole idea, because spontaneity and unpredictability are intimidating. I have to encourage and instruct on the fly without knowing how it's going to go. So I want to close our time together by talking to my friend Wendy and getting some basic tips on how we can better respond in the moment, how we can better recognize and take advantage of teachable moments. We've been taking some time to talk about spiritual coaching. And one of the things we've been emphasizing as we talk about spiritual coaching is that it's something that anyone can do in the household, and it's something that can happen in every type of household. So right now, we're going to spend some time talking with Wendy. And Wendy is going to help us get a better understanding of how we might approach spiritual coaching and some things we can do. Wendy, as we get started, can you just kind of give me an overview of how you approach spiritual coaching in your own household?
Yeah, I really, really love the idea of spiritual coaching. I love to be involved. I love to be intentional with my kids. Like if you're with a coach who's extremely intense, right? Mm-hmm. And that coach is really focused on winning. Mm-hmm. So you can tell a coach that's like yelling at the kids because they have these internal things going on. They really want to win, or they see the weakness of the team. And so they're constantly like pointing out the weakness. Mm-hmm. That creates this posture of like interrogation with the team or roughness. Mm-hmm. And I think as parents, it's kind of the same way. Like if I'm a spiritual coach for my kids, mm-hmm. and I'm focused on their weakness, or I'm focused on my internal fear, like what if my kids are ruined forever? Or what if they go to school, I feel like they're getting eaten by the wolves, right? So I come home and I want to know right away, how have you been eaten by the wolves today? Mm-hmm. Right. So I found myself when I focused on God instead of my own, like trying to fix it, that when they came home from school, instead of like asking them questions like, well, who did you sit by at lunch? Or who's influencing you wrong today? I sat down with a cup of coffee and just made myself available. And I waited for my children to be ready to talk to me. And I was more watchful. I was more calm. I was more peaceful. Mm-hmm. And that made all the difference in the world. And it worked. They came to me.
If I really think about it, there are a lot of times when I lose the goal that God has given me and lean into, as you were suggesting, the fear of the thing that could happen and right. Let that steer me. So focus on God, not the fear, would be the first thing I heard there. The second would be don't interrogate. Mm-hmm. And I think that probably is very much linked into fear, as you were describing. And then the third thing, this idea that the image you just said of sitting down with a cup of coffee is one of accessibility, being there, being available to a person, which I guess is just a key pre-component almost to coaching.
Yeah.
When you're watching the household, I'm even thinking about your kids and their different ages. Do you ever see them, even apart from you, coaching each other or jumping into a moment?
As I watch my kids bring hard people into the house, and they are teaching the younger generation, they are falling in love with these hard people. It's not, the action at the beginning may be a choice, but then they learn to really love people, and Jesus changes them. And then my youngest son gets to see that. And so by doing it, by repeating the taglines, they're also discipling, coaching the younger kids.
So it's intentional.
It's intentional.
The whole household is talking about this thing that you're doing, and it's not really hidden. The goals of the household of nurturing faith, of growing closer to God together is something you're talking about, and therefore can lean into in these moments.
Yeah, the whole family knows that at Christmas time, everyone's invited. It's not just our family huddle. We think about people outside our family that can come for dinner. We think about single people in our life that need a place, need a home. It's flexible. We're thinking outside the box, but we're all on that. We're all on board with the goal and the vision and the intentionality.
Now, as we wrap up this study, we want this to be more than just something that you've learned, but something you can actually put into practice. Remember the 3 characteristics of spiritually vibrant households. They apply spiritual disciplines, they engage in spiritual conversations, and they extend hospitality. How can you, as a household, intentionally pursue that together? We pray that what you've learned here in this study will be a blessing on your household as you nurture faith together.